There are hundreds of spells in Baldur's Gate 3, and in this video I'll be ranking the best spell at each level and showcasing some honorable mentions. Now, the first level I want to start off with is level 6, as these are the most powerful spells, and there are 5 of them that I want to talk about. First one being Odaluk's Freezing Sphere. This is my favorite of the 5, and unfortunately the weakest of them. It does a 10d6 of cold damage, and the big thing is you can actually do a little bit of a cheese. If you get a lot of scrolls, you can have everyone on your team cast the portable version, throw it on somebody, they explode after 10 turns, you can give it to a character, and they can become an icy nuke and explode with all of these. It does require a lot of setup, so that's obviously not something I'm going to be considering, but the damage itself is pretty decent because you can double cold damage, but you can also do the same for Chain Lightning at level 6. It's the largest area that we can get for a spell that deals damage like this, so that's why it is really good. It has the highest potential for damage, but it only does the 10d6 when we got things like Chain Lightning doing a 10d8 of damage instead, which has a maximum of 80. If you have water, that's 160 versus the 120 maximum damage potential from Odaluk's Freezing Sphere. This only hits 4 targets, however. But another thing with Chain Lightning is if you multi-class like a wizard with the Tempest Domain Cleric, they can max roll their Chain Lightning to get 168 damage. It's actually pretty absurd. So that's obviously a very powerful damage spell. And we also got Globe of Invulnerability. This is a very powerful spell that makes you immune to all damage. Now, there is a little bit of setup you do need to use with Globe of Invulnerability because when you pop this down, you can be shoved and things like that. But there's literally Minthara's boots that you can get in the early game, the Boots of Striding, which whenever you're concentrating, you don't get pushed around, which lets you set this up and not have to worry. You can have your entire team in here. They're all invincible. They just don't take damage, which is extremely powerful. And one other thing I want to mention and why I think this is a very powerful spell is if you have Extended Spell, 1 sorcery point turns your 3-turn duration into a 6-turn duration, meaning you're going to be immune for the entirety of combat because typically fights don't go past 6 rounds. That is pretty absurd. The other 2 spells I do want to mention is Hero's Feast, which can give your entire team a health buff, also gives you wisdom saves with advantage, which is just absolutely crazy good. And the thing is, you can also just cast this and have someone cast it and just have them leave your party. You can also get pizza from this, which is one of the coolest things in Baldur's Gate 3. So amazing in that regard too. But the best part about this is it makes you can't get poisoned. And interestingly enough, if you're under the effects of Hero's Feast, you actually don't get damaged by Cloud Kill, meaning you can pop this down and make the enemies run into it and take all that damage. Although poison damage kind of sucks, it actually makes Cloud Kill be pretty useful, and especially when you consider like Necromancers who their zombies don't get hurt by this either. And the last one I mentioned is Planar Ally. Now, there is also the level 6 version Myrmidons, which are extremely good. I think that if you're to use the Myrmidons, playing a Moon Druid that can stun 3 targets per turn is really crazy. Now, we got 2 really good options. The Cambion is not good, but you can get the Cambion from Will's Infernal Rapier if you want that level 6 spell early. But the Deva here is really good because it has a very powerful weapon. You can also steal the weapon if you go into their inventory, which does an additional 48 of radiant damage. But I personally really like the Genie. The Genie is underrated because whenever you summon it in, it also can do a large pushback. It gets Thunderwave and it can spam it every turn. It doesn't have a high chance of pushback, but you can hit a lot of targets with this. And the best part about it is it can use Shifting Winds to sneak into the enemy's backline really quickly. So it's a very tanky character as well. It's got 161 health and a 19 armor class, and it's also immune to thunder and lightning damage. So you can spam your spells and not have to worry about it. And it can also do opportunity attacks. It also comes with the Drunken Inhale for making targets drunk if you really want to force dex failures on them. And then Sweet Plum Gales, which you can actually use as an action to hold a bunch of targets in place, restraining them. Although I do think spamming Thunderwave near ledges is possibly the best way to use this. His weapon also does a decent bit of damage, up to 32 damage on a melee attack is kind of nice. Both of these spells are tough to use, but you can use, like, there's 2 staffs that give you Arcane Battery for a free spell casting, so your cleric can just use that temporarily to give themselves a free planar ally, and then use the other staff, Marka Heshker and a Staff of Spell Power they're called, to then use Hero's Feast on your entire team. However, as good as those spells are, I still think the absolute best level 6 spell in the game is Globe of Invulnerability. I do hear people say that this spell does have some issues where you can get shoved around, but there's actually a lot of items. Like in the late game, you got the Helldust boots as well, and then early game, you got Minthara's boots that prevent you from being shoved around. But yeah, I honestly think just because this spell does turn the game into kind of easy mode, it just ends up being the best because of that. There's no other spell in the game that can make everyone invulnerable like that. Just plain and simple, this is actually a crazy spell. Even crazier with the Metamagic Extended Spell for 1 sorcery point. You have to take Extended Spell and use that. It becomes literally it's the best spell in the game for winning. Really good in the answer boss fight with the lightning claps. You can just throw this down, you're safe. Again, 6 turns is a crazy amount of time. As far as level 5 spells go, there's a few standouts. As mentioned previously, Conjure Elemental is really good. Now, there's actually a big nerf to the level 6 Myrmidon forms. Water Myrmidon used to be able to set up water in huge area of effect. They changed that in patch 8, which actually then makes the water or the water elemental even better, because the water elemental only costs a level 5 spell slot, and what it can do with 141 health, it has a slam attack that actually sets up a water surface, which is great, but then it also chills the target, so it can go in with its very low hit percentage. It can set up chilled, which is going to make the target take double cold damage. So now you see 2 turn to chilled on Minsk there. This is really useful because this is just something that, again, you can use the Staff of Spell Power to summon one of these in, and it's just going to go around doing a bit of cold damage, mainly though setting up your damage to do double damage, but it does do a respectable amount of damage. And with all the summons, people don't realize this, but they have Misty Step. They can get around. They got crazy movement speed, and if you're going to bring it in combat, I'd actually recommend pre-casting, using Hero's Feast, and Aid on top of all that to give this even more health. But yeah, it's just got a really useful ability to take up damage and help you set up double damage on Cone of Cold, which is the next spell that I want to talk about, because 8d8 of damage is really nice with a large radius. This is one of the best things about it, is that not only are you doing like really good damage, mind you, we got Odaluk's Freezing Sphere at a level 6 doing 10d6 maximum 60 damage. This is a maximum of 64 damage, so you can actually sometimes do better with a Cone of Cold. While Odaluk's Freezing Sphere's radius is better, it's a level 6 spell, so just comparing the two of these, Cone of Cold is one of my favorite spells in the game, just because it's easy to set up double damage. The Bard can get it with their magical secrets, so it's really an accessible spell, and it pairs so well with the Water Elemental, which the Bard can also get. But there's another level 5 spell that's pretty strong with the Banishing Smite. Now, the only reason I'm not going to include this is it's a little bit weird, as it's only available to the Bard at Magical Secrets, but it is a good spell. It does 5d10 of force damage on top of your weapon damage, so if you're doing a ranged attack, it's pretty nice, and it banishes the target if they got less than 50 health. All right, well, my PC just crashed a few times because I was gathering forbidden knowledge. These 2 level 5 spells are interesting because you can only get 1 scroll of them, and only someone that's got a wizard tag can learn them. Now, you can roll. One of my favorite builds is 11 levels of sorcerer, 1 level of wizard. This is the way that the draconic sorcerer can get access to get access to Odaluk's Freezing Sphere, but it also gives them access to these 2 spells. They're both good, but the unfortunate part is one's per long rest, one's per short rest. Even if you learn these from the scrolls, you're still not going to be able to spam them like you want to. That's the unfortunate part about them, because let's face it, they are strong. This is a 12d6 plus 36 force damage, and Dethrone does a 10d6 plus 20 necrotic damage. These are both very powerful spells. I don't think they're the best level 5 spells, but I do want to mention them, and they made my PC crash because they are forbidden knowledge. But I'll let the VFX rip because, yeah, the skulls that fly out of this look really cool. I love that. And then Dethrone also looks pretty badass. I love the VFX. It is kind of like Eldritch Blast, but the skulls that fly out, I wish they flew a little slower so you could see them better. So cool. Now, I think 3rd place goes to Cone of Cold. 2nd place goes to Conjure Elemental, just because extra health bars is protecting the team, dealing damage. It's a good use of your action in your spell slot. But I think the best level 5 spell slot, hear me out on this, Destructive Wave is actually a very crazy spell. Not everyone runs with clerics, but the reason that I think it's so crazy is because look at the radius of this. It does respectable damage, doing 5d6 of both thunder and radiant damage, which is crazy because those are the 2 types of damage that actually let you set up a lot of the conditions in the game, like reverberation or radiating orbs. This is one of the most best protective spells in the game, and it's available on 2 of the best subclasses that I rank S tier easily, with the Tempest Domain and the Light Domain Cleric. So both of these are great for radiating orb builds because you can pop up Spirit Guardians at level 3 and have radiant waves there just blowing everyone away because it knocks them prone too. It pushes them back, does the damage, and whatever conditions you may apply. I just think that damage type combination is so crazy. I know people say, oh, well, there's radiant people that are immune to radiant. Well, there's only a couple fights in the game, and then you can pull the necrotic version if you wanted to. So that's not really that bad of the counter. Radiant damage is amazing most of the game, and there's things like Shades that take double damage from Radiant, but being able to apply Radiating Orbs to protect your entire team in this large of a radius and deal like a very respectable amount of damage makes me think that Destructive Wave is easily the best level 5 spell. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'm sure that there's other opinions out there. Now, level 4 spells are kind of stale. Level 3 has a lot of the power spikes because every character has a power spike like level 5 or 6. Level 4 is a bit weird, and one of my favorites is Conjure Woodland Being, because this is one of the most like effective spells for just protecting your team, because not only do you get a Dryad, which doesn't have a lot of health, but again, Hero's Feast and Aid do apply to it, so that 22 health can get literally up to like 70. And then on top of that, it also has its Fallen Lover. So not only do you get 1 summon, you get 2, and you can hold your concentration on Spike Growth with the Dryad, and then have your Entanglement Woodwode here just go in and use Entangle. So Great for crowd control, and you get 2 summons that both can get healed up. It's a great spell, and also there is the minor elemental that you also get with this level. Unfortunately, the Azure here is not like super amazing. The Ice Method's my favorite because it can explode and deal a bit of cold damage, and it leaves surfaces, which is great. But the minor elementals are not very powerful. 33 health is better than nothing, but nothing to like call home about. It's all right. The Ice Methods, again, being the best choice here. Wall of Fire is an okay level 4 spell because it is a concentration, but it can deal damage to enemies multiple times in a row, doing a 5d8 on a dex save, and you can put it in some pretty strategic locations. Last 2 honorable mentions is Confusion, which is confusing in how it works. A lot of people don't actually know. It's very vague in how it works, but basically, you do a huge area of effect, and the area of effect can actually increase as you upcast it, which is really nice because, yeah, you can control a lot of people. Now, they do work randomly. There's a 50-50 chance when you confuse an enemy. It either does nothing and it skips its turn, or it's going to attack at random, and it's I find it's most likely to attack at random. It can attack you, and it can attack its enemies. Your enemies, it can attack anybody. It's just random how it works. It's a fun spell because despite lasting for 3 turns, sometimes it just helps the enemies just weed themselves out, but a very heavy RNG factor, so I understand why some people don't like that spell. Another one I want to mention is Greater Invisibility. Now, this actually pairs well with a level 2 spell, Pass Without Trace from the Ranger. While you're in this, you can attack, and you can actually stay invisible in Greater Invisibility as long as you succeed on a stealth check. So when you're in stealth here, you can do your attacks, and then stealth successful, it'll keep rolling up higher and higher each turn. So we succeeded in the stealth check, which was 20. That means the next time that we do it, or the difficulty class is 15, so the next one will be 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. With Pass Without Trace giving you a plus 10, getting advantage on dex saves from, or dex checks from like the Cat's Grace item or the Graceful Cloth in Act 1. This is a crazy good spell because you can go into invisibility even further with a Darkness Pocket and just continually keep attacking everyone. They don't know. It's pretty busted in terms of how powerful it is, and you can even cast this on someone else and have someone else cast Path Without Trace as well. And actually, one thing I want to mention, one of my favorite uses of Greater Invisibility, as I talked about earlier, the Odaluk's Freezing Spear, where you get your entire team to cast them because it just creates an item. Give it to one person that has greater invisibility. They run up and sneak up behind Gortash or something, and they just explode. They'll take him out in one turn. But what I think to be the best level 4 spell slot, it's one of my favorites too. It's just a really good, valuable spell with Ice Storm. Now, some people may not like this spell, but surfaces in Baldur's Gate 3, when they're this large at a level 4 spell slot, is a pretty good reason to use it. Because you're creating difficult terrain, which forces everyone to do a save on. And you can actually, ice can be pretty crazy if you have really high spell save DC because it's going to force them to use your spell save DC. I just did a build, or I just made a mod for a Winter Druid, or a Winter Bard, so you can check that out if you're curious, and that really utilizes cold damage. But Ice Storm is just a very powerful spell for zoning. You can put it at the enemy's backline, and then their AI is going to make them try to walk out of it. So they're going to walk towards you. They end up slipping. Ice can break concentrations, and if an enemy's walking towards you and slips on their turn's over. So it shuts down fighters because they have to run up typically to attack, or they're going to do a weaker attack that they may not want to do. Now, the damage isn't anything amazing, 2d8 bludgeoning and 4d6 cold, but they kind of synergize together. If you freeze a target, they take double bludgeoning damage, and if you chill a target, they take double cold damage. So it is actually kind of possible to set this up a little bit, but it's not as easy as Cone of Cold. It's just a really good spell for being able to shut down a lot of people at a time, and only being a level 4 spell slot is good. Now, I was really close to putting the Woodland Being in first place because I think being able to distract and crowd control that way is really nice too, but Ice Storm you can spam and do damage with, whereas the Spike Growth is not really that damaging. Now, level 3 spells, where do I begin? There are so many good ones. The classic Fireball, 8d6 of fire damage, or an 8d6 of lightning damage in a straight line with Lightning Bolt. This I prefer because it can be doubled with a Mage Hand Water Bottle combination. There's also fun ones like Haste. This is honestly very close to being the best level 3 spell, but I do think there is one that's a little bit better because this has a big drawback. You can actually, if you're playing as a sorcerer, you can use Twinned Spell, and you can haste yourself and somebody else. This is crazy value because you then immediately gain your action back, so you can cast another spell, but then whoever you hasted is going to have an extra action as well, so they can cast 2 spells. Or if you're outside honor mode, they can go and attack 6 times if they're a fighter. So yeah, haste is absolutely an insanely good spell. One that people should use more. It gives a +2 to armor class. But the big problem, I'm going to showcase it right here, is if your concentration breaks, you lose an entire turn of combat. You can do some pretty funny cheeses, like using a potion of speed, which does a similar thing, and the Terrazol item, which will give you another action. So there are ways around it, but I think haste is probably the 3rd best spell just because the drawback is so rough, just to put it plainly. The 2nd best spell I want to recommend at level 3 is Spirit Guardians. Again, I mentioned how Destructive Wave is so good because radiant damage is easy to apply on enemies. Only one person can use Spirit Guardians at a time, so I mean, the reason being is if they're in Spirit Guardians, they take their Spirit Guardian damage for their turn, and then if you were to have someone else with this, like a Crown Paladin run in with it, they don't take the damage again because they already got affected by that condition. It lasts for 10 turns. You can scale it up to do additional radiant damage. It halves movement speed. And another crazy thing is there's a lot of gear in the game that stacks off of you doing conditions. So if you have things like the Boots of Stormy Clamor, when you apply a condition on a target, it applies 2 turns of reverberation. What's really silly about this, and is why I think this is one of the greatest spells, is because this is a condition. They get the stacks of reverberation, and if they're close to the 7 stacks of reverberation, they can go prone from this. So meaning they're going in to attack you, and they go prone, they lose their turn. So Spirit Guardians can actually be crazy in defense. It's one of the best for Light and Tempest Domain, 2 of the best builds in the game. But in my honest opinion, I think the best level 3 spell slot is kind of a funny one. I guess rather the lack of a spell with Counterspell. This is just extremely good. Honestly, it's so powerful. Another thing that I really like in patch 8 is using the Blade Singing Wizard with the Duelist Prerogative for 2 reactions and having 2 counter spells. That's pretty busted because this stops a spell from being cast. Kind of essential, especially when there's things like Command and Hold Person. Like if you get hit with a Hold Person and then get critically hit, that's game over basically right there. And Command too, because commands can just be really bad. They break your concentrations. Being able to say nope and shut it down right away is one of the reasons that Counterspell is such a valuable spell. I know this isn't the fun answer, and a lot of people would probably be like, oh, I like Fireball more. Me too. But Counterspell is just the better spell. So yeah, this was the toughest one to rank. I thought about this a very long time, but I mean, Lightning Bolt is great, Fireball's great, Haste is amazing, Spirit Guardians is also great, but being able to stop a spell from being cast is just extremely valuable. Now, level 2 spells are in an awkward stage because some of them are extremely good, like Shadow Blade, for example. I'm not going to put this on the list because technically this is the best spell in the game because a 4d8 of psychic damage that you can double is absurd. It's the best weapon in the game. We're not going to include Shadow Blade for my sanity and everyone else's in this video. Misty Step is a great spell, however, because this allows you to teleport around for a level 2 spell slot. Pretty nice survivability-wise. Mirror Image, also quite valuable, increasing your armor class by 9. Every time you get attacked, it reduces by 3. This can be pretty tanky. Knock, another fantastic spell, and actually one that I highly recommend using if you go to the Gauntlet of Shar on subsequent playthroughs, because ain't nobody got time for that. This lets you skip past it and open the doors that are held shut magically. Invisibility is kind of like Greater Invisibility, but it doesn't have the great effects that the level 4 spell has, where you can continually keep succeeding on it. Cloud of Daggers is a really great spell too, because this doesn't have a save. If someone walks through it, they get hit with the 44 slashing damage. This is like one of the few spells in the game that's just guaranteed damage. With good placement, this is a very powerful spell. Another underrated spell I want to quickly mention is Crown of Madness. This makes the enemies attack someone else kind of good. An extended spell also works in Crown of Madness, making it really nice. Scorching Ray is a very powerful spell, and I thought heavily about putting this one on because there's one piece of gear that makes this absurd. The Hat of Fire Acuity. Whenever you deal fire damage, you gain Arcane Acuity, which gives you a +2 to your spell save DC. Meaning, if you're multi-class and you don't have great spell casting, you can get a +10 from just casting a simple Scorching Ray. So this is going to kill Will, so it won't get the multiple hits, but you'll just get the example of it. Scorching Ray is fantastic for setting up your other spells. Oh, we actually did get the Arcane Acuity to +10. And then the next turn turns, so we end up losing 1 stack of it. But now you see our spell save DC, and then I got the +1 again because the fire actually, oddly enough, if you create a surface, will create the Arcane Acuity to work because it's fire damage. It's so weird. But yeah, we got our spell save DC back up to +10, giving us a 28. And I don't have my wisdom or my intelligence high. See, +1 from intelligence, and we'd have a 24 in spell casting. So Hat of Fire Acuity plus Scorching Ray makes this extremely good. But if I'm going to count that, it's kind of like I'm considering the gear as part of it. The spell itself isn't that. It's still a strong spell, doing a 66 of fire damage, upcasts well. But what I believe to be the best level 2 spell also upcasts very well, and it can set up some pretty crazy things. This is Hold Person. I almost put Hold Monster as the best level 5 spell slot because being able to hold Monster against some of the late game bosses is really good, but Hold Person is valuable throughout the entire game. And there's one particular way that I think it is extremely good. So what we can do with this, now I don't have this set up very well, but 96 and 94% chance you can upcast it to level 3. We now have 2 targets held in place. Now I have a sorcerer here. I just wanted to illustrate how crazy this can be because there's an item called Arrow of Many Targets in this game. It's absurd, this combo, because you get an automatic critical hit from close range, meaning your attacks will all be crits, because the way Arrow of Many Targets works is if you get your first attacks a crit, they all become crits. So this can be really good if you got like Sharpshooter, which is giving even further damage, and a bunch of damage riders. Again, I'm playing a sorcerer, which is not spec for melee or range attack, and you see there just a 1d4. But this is so good because you can literally just chain this around to multiple people, get a bunch of crits, and then if you have things like the Crater Flesh gloves, that adds a 1d6 of force damage, and then adds a bunch of riders, and it's absurd. And furthermore crazy, Scorching Ray also gets free crits as well, so boom, you can just explode them with crits easily. Honestly, that's probably a good combination. How to Fire Cutie, Scorching Ray, get your spell save DC up so you do land your Hold Person, and then blast away for their free crits. They kind of combo together better, but I think Hold Person is just one of the best spells in the game because it's so valuable when you land it. And then later in the game, you got Hold Monster for similar effects on some of the late game bosses. Now, level 1 spells has a lot of spells. Shield being a really nice reaction to increase your armor class by 5 and take no damage from Magic Missile. This is just great because this gives you a way of saving yourself from taking damage. Magic Missile also being a great spell because it just does damage. It can carry riders, so if you got something cool like the Coruscation Ring here, whenever we deal spell damage while illuminated, we apply Radiating Orbs. That actually applies the Rad Orbs on all of our Magic Missiles. There's also an item that gives us an extra Magic Missile. This is a very good spell because it can just deal a lot of damage, and it always hits. And for level 1 spell, again, there's so many good choices. You got Bless. Obviously, Bless is really good, but you can get Bless from a ring from Volo early on in the game when you heal everyone, so you typically don't use that spell a crazy amount. Create Water can be a really good one too, but there's also water bottles to set up water using Mage Hand, so you don't even have to spend a spell slot, and you can get the double cold and lightning damage, but very good spell. Healing Word's a great value for being able to set up buffs, so there's a lot of items in the game that gives you buffs when you heal an enemy or target. Sanctuary is another fantastic spell because you can basically keep a target safe for 10 turns, and they can take damage from things like Firewall, but it makes it so they can't be targeted, which is a really nice ability, so that's a great spell too. But I honestly think that the best level 1 spell in the game is Command. This is actually kind of crazy because Command, not only is it not requiring a concentration, but you can do some pretty silly stuff if you were to get it on your Sorcerer. Extended Command lasts for 2 turns, which is kind of broken because when you use this, you can have like Command Approach, and those approach you for 2 turns. A Command Grovel, they'll sit on the ground, be prone for 2 turns. That's crazy. But there's also another reason why this is so good. There's an item in the game called the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel. This allows you to do an enchantment or illusion spell after attacking as a bonus action, which means that if you do a weapon attack, this gives you a free command, making paladins and bards extremely powerful, and especially so a paladin bard, because the paladin gets this as part of their spell list. So what you can do as a paladin, if you got the 10 levels of bard, 2 levels of paladin, still gets level 6 spell slots, and it gets command. You can do your slashing flourishes, divine smite 4 targets in your action, which is 2 attacks, and then as your bonus action, you can upcast command and hit 5 or 6 targets with this, because it gives you another target per upcast. This becomes crazy because that's a spell that shuts down multiple enemies, and if you further pair this with an item they fixed in patch 8, the Gloves of the Battle Mage's Power, when you hit a target with a spell or a cantrip that uses a weapon, you gain Arcane Acuity. Shadow Blade counts, and also the Divine Smite action counts, and Booming Blade counts, so you can get yourself that plus 10 to spell save DC, so then you land every command. It's actually absurd. That's why I think Command is the best level 1 spell in the game, just because it's so flexible. It can last for 2 turns. It's a really good one. Now, Cantrips will be really easy because there's 2 standouts here. Now, things like the Mage Hand spell are very useful because you can throw healing potions and water bottles. Things like the Minor Illusion are great because you can group enemies together. But Eldritch Blast is the best range cantrip in the game because you can, at higher levels, shoot 3 of these, and they scale off of your character level, which is so great. And the Warlock gets extra damage and a pushback on it. But I think now, patch 8, Booming Blade is the best. You can select this as your high elf cantrip, so anybody, you can have a Battlemaster fighter use Booming Blade, and it's so good. Even on the Eldritch Knight fighter, can give them, it can trigger their War Magic extra attacks, so they get 4 attacks. It adds a 2d8, and if I have a high level mod here giving 3d8, but it does a 2d8 of thunder damage and then 3d8 if the target moves. It's absurd. And if you combine them all together, Booming Blade after command, Hold Person for the free crits, and then you also have Counterspell to keep your team safe, Ice Storm to create surfaces so the enemies end up slipping and falling, your Cleric with Destructive Wave for the Radiating Orbs and pushback on that, and then you got Global Invulnerability. Using those spells, you'll beat the game easily. I just thought this was a fun concept. I'm curious to hear your thoughts, so feel free to leave them below, and I hope you guys all have a great day. Hit the subscribe button below if you haven't already, and I'll catch you in the next one.